What I learnt from my first interior design clients. The biggest thing that most people do when they first start when they first start working with clients is they they think that that first client isn't the real client. And what I mean is that most people get their first client through someone they know, and or it's someone that they do know, and because of that, they don't treat that person like a real client. They just think, oh, it's not a real project. I'm going to make it a real project, but because it's not a client that came as a cold lead, then this can't be treated as a real project. So that is the biggest first mistake. When you are dealing with any client as a professional, no matter if you know them or if you don't, you need to be the professional, you need to guide the process, and you need to treat every single client like a real client. So this was something that I didn't do at the beginning because those first few clients were friends. And we had no contract and we had no written brief. We had a very fluid and flexible timeline, which meant that I did more than I should have on those projects, and also didn't get paid for them. So the reality is if you are in business, you need to be treating every person that comes your way as a client, no matter if you know them or not. So that is the first big lesson. The next lesson is interior design takes a really long time. And what I mean by this is that I am a very optimistic person, and I always, in my mind, think that, yeah, and I even do that to this day, 20 years later, I still think that interior design doesn't actually take that long where if I just work it out in my mind. My mind, your mind, all of our minds distort. That's why we have imagination. It distorts information. So you need to keep a timesheet. You need to write down, and especially if you're doing a fee proposal for the project, write down what you actually expect that project to entail. And if you don't do that in the proper way, because if you just go, yeah, I think I just need some concepts, I just need this and that, then that should only be a few hours. And I do this still to this day, in my mind, it's not going to take long. And then as soon as I actually work out my fee proposal and I put a time next to each of the items that I know I need to do, or the list of products that I need to create for that service, all of a sudden, I'm like, ooh, this is going to take a lot longer than I expected. And I still do it to this day. So the biggest lesson I learnt from those first few clients is to make sure that I do keep a timesheet so that I do always know how long things are taking me. And if anyone tells you that you don't need timesheets, you do. Please just don't listen to that. You need to know how long you're spending on things in order to track the data and see how profitable you are as a designer, especially if you are a designer in business. So not only tracking your time, but also, even if you don't know at a project where you don't have crystal balls, so most projects we don't actually know we can't actually price a full project from start to finish unless we've done lots of projects like that that are similar. So what you can price is what you can propose is at least the first phase of a project, which is the concept phase, or the feasibility study, if that's where you're entering on the project. So that first part we can actually do really well and pretty accurately, because we've got enough information from the brief to at least calculate a fee and understand that first process. So because of that, you can make sure that you put the time and list out the items that you're going to be doing, or the activities that you're going to be doing. This means that you are 99% closer to being as accurate as you can on that in terms of pricing the time, or even just estimating how much resources are required for that project. If you don't do it, your mind will distort you, and it will distort how long you think it's going to take, and it will take 10 times longer than you expected it to take. So you've got to do this for every single project. You need to sit down and work out how long you think it's going to take. And that is one of the best lessons I learned from those first few projects because it's something that I've now mastered in terms of a process for not only pricing projects but understanding the resources that are required for a project. Obviously, that's what I share with my mentees. So things like sourcing. Sourcing takes a really long time. Just even think of one piece of furniture. One piece of furniture for a big project, one piece of furniture for a little project, one piece of furniture for even not a very lucrative project. So what we would call, trying not to use the word cheap, just like a cost-effective project on a tight budget. So even on a cost-effective project, to find the perfect thing for the perfect price at the right size, for the right color, in the right fabric, to fit through probably the very narrow door that it needs to go through to get into to the property. All of those kind of requirements still take a long time to source. So as a general rule, I usually leave, even just for the average project, 1 day for sourcing one item. So when you start thinking about how many items you might be sourcing, that's a really long time. So always write down all of the things, like how many rooms, and then count the rooms out, and how many items of furniture that might be. So that is a really, really, really big lesson. The next lesson is you need to take control of the project. And this sounds a bit wishy-washy, but it isn't. In terms of the project, you need to take ownership, because the client will be coming to you and hoping that you will guide the process. And if you're not confident in your process or the process of an interior design project, then it's going to be a mess. And then the client will push you, and then the builder will push you, and then other people on the project will start pushing you in the direction that you don't want to go, and the project will be a disaster. So you need to have not only an opinion, you need to be confident about what the process is and how to undertake a project from start to finish, but also how your services and what you're doing for that specific project to fit into that process. So how to run a project is something I teach. That is a really important thing, which I actually think is really strange that they don't actually teach you at design school. That they show you, like, they hint at it, but they don't actually show you the exact process of how to run a project, which is crazy. And it's not just a straightforward thing. You do need to understand a lot in order to do that. Next is, if you want to be paid, and this is a really important one, if you want to be paid more than just a few dollars or pounds for a project, you need to show up. And what I mean by this is that I was really shy, and I was also a confident designer in the sense that I had already been working for a long time, and I knew how to design very well, like the process of design very well. I was really confident with the process and how to present and create buildings very, very early on. But what I wasn't confident with was actually showing up. So I was always that person who was very good as an assistant, but not the face of the company. And because of that, I would just wanted to take a backseat. And what I would do is I'd get the brief, and then I'd go away and disappear for 2 weeks, and then I'd present the information. That is not how to run a project, and that is a really, really, really bad way to create client communication. Even if you're shy, have a process in place to touch base with your client. Keep the client updated. You need to show up. If you want to be paid more than just a few dollars for a project, you need to be available for the client. So you need to have a process in place that that moves that project from A to B, C, D, E, F, G. So you need to be confident in that process, and you also need to be the person that shows up, answers the phone when the client calls. And I know this sounds crazy, but I was afraid to answer the phone when I first started out. I had a phobia of answering the phone. So it was really hard for me to do just the things that I would have thought that normal people would naturally do. But it wasn't that easy for me because I was so shy. And even though I was really good as a designer in the sense that I knew how to do the job, I wasn't very good at being a people person if I was running the project. So I needed to be the person who took control of the project, but also was somebody who could speak about it openly, speak about price, speak about things that were difficult to have a conversation about. Perhaps if the client wanted me to change something, then how would I deal with that criticism or feedback? So you need to be the kind of person that can deal with that. Next is I've kind of touched on this, but you need to be organized, and you need your processes in place. But critically, you need to stick to those processes. So I have a process where to guarantee that I get it right, what my client wants every single time, I have a process. And when I start my process with onboarding the client, I go through that process. I promise you, every single time that I kind of thought, oh, the client doesn't want to do that bit of the process, so don't worry about it. Or if I was like, oh, it's for a friend, it doesn't matter, I know them so well, I'm not going to go do that part of the process. Every time I don't follow my process, I get it wrong. Every time, 100%. So follow the process, don't waver. It doesn't matter who it's for, you follow the process. You always do the right thing for the project. So that is, stay organized, obviously always have your contracts, always do the onboarding process as you would with any other project. And finally, just to end it off, clients take really bad photos. And this is one I wish wasn't true, but the vast majority of clients will take the worst photos that you could ever possibly imagine. So you need to prepare for this. You need to just know that maybe that first project or those first few projects aren't going to be the award-winning project that it is in your head. So, don't expect too much from those first projects. Just know that if you complete it from start to end and do a great job and that client is really happy, that is a winning project, especially for your first or second project. If you don't have spectacular photos from that project, that is possibly very normal. Rather than a big failure. I know so many interior designers will think that, I did that job for free, or I was expecting to get photos. This is why you try and get paid for every single project that you do, because you're not going to get great photos from those first few projects. That's just the reality. Because, you're new at this. And I was even new at the process by the time I started my business. I was 15 years into my architecture and interior design career. So even I had to learn that lesson really really painfully. So know that clients aren't, if you are asking the client, especially if you're an e-designer trying to get client photos, then they're not going to be great. So they're not going to be stunning portfolio photos that you expect, unless they are an influencer and very good with their phone. So what did I learn from my first interior design clients? That interior design takes a long time. Firstly, I need to own the project. Interior design takes a long time. You need to take control of the project. If you want to be paid more than just a few dollars for a project, you need to be available for the project, and be there, be the confident person that needs to be able to take control of that project. You need to be organized, follow your processes, and just know that those final photos are not going to be the award-winning photos that you're expecting them to be at the outset. I'm Jo Krobak. I'm an architect and an interior designer, and the CEO of the Interior Designers Business School here in London.